Now, now we're on. Hey!
Hey!
Well, hello, peoples. Welcome to what Krista Foerster is referred to as the KaleidoSkype Nights interview, which is fun. We're doing these over Skype because of a couple of reasons. Some people are out of town, out of state, and it's very difficult to meet up with them, in particular during this time. So we found a loophole around it. We're doing, and so with us is a very long-awaited interview. I've been wanting to have her on for forever and a day. This is the right-hand person of this book. Helped me out the most, was there with me throughout the entire process, through good and bad, and was never deterred and always spurred me on and championed this book. So, if you all welcome with me, Miss Krista Foerster. Krista is the main editor, the chief editor, and design layout. I believe the term is layout designer. But you kind of did a little of everything in the book. I mean, you kind of had a hand in everything.
Yeah. I mean, you kept seeing if I was interested in things and trusting me. I'm not sure why, but you kept coming back, and I was like, well, yeah, I'll help. Because I think, how long ago did we start this?
I have no idea. Honest, it had to have been at least 2-3 years, maybe.
Yeah.
2 years, 2 years, maybe.
What is time anymore?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been wanting to do a book since I was 15, and then later on in high school, you and I were in a lit mag class together, which some of the best times of our lives, I think. In class with amazing students and an awesome teacher who we had on here, Mrs. Tufty. And ever since we published, did you do 2 of them or 3 of them? Were you?
2, because I think, gosh, I wonder if, yeah, well, I was going to say, I thought that you had told me about it, or like you had maybe been in longer than I had. I wonder if that was someone else.
It might have been someone else.
Okay.
I had her my sophomore year as an English teacher.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much after that, you're really only expected to have, I think, be in that class like 1 more year. But I think I found a way to be in it for 2 because it's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, ever since we had that class together and we did those 2 books, I've always wanted to continue that. I've always wanted to produce one of my own, but I also love the collaborative element of that book. I didn't want it to be just me. I knew in some form I wanted to have other artists' influence in the book. And actually, I had spitballed the idea of having other people's poetry in there and stuff too. And later on came down to the idea it was better just maybe some of the artwork and stuff from other people artists. But I think even from that part during Lit Mag, I've always kind of had you in mind to, if at all possible, help me out with any sort of the book, whether you're doing like the behind the scenes technical aspect of it, or if you're producing some form of artwork for it or whatever. Because I mean, I've known you since elementary school, which is freaky. I mean, that's weird to think about. And I think we've always kind of been friends. I don't really remember a grade where I drew mustaches on you in the yearbook or anything like that, I actually found one not long ago where I'd written I think it was like an evil mustache on Zach Miller's face, which
Oh my God.
which is funny because years later, like him and I are best friends. So
Uh-huh.
I was one of those kids. I did that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
But
I think I mainly did that to my sister.
did you?
You know, the goatee and the
Yeah,
angry eyebrows.
yeah, or a unibrow sometimes or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I've ever had any bad memories of you in any grade at any age. I think we always seem to get along well, and some years obviously we didn't have many classes together or see each other a whole lot, but whenever we did, it was always like, oh my God, that's Krista. Hey, how's it
Yeah.
going?
Yeah. Well, because did we have a class with the theater teacher? Her name is escaping me. I think you had her for
Andy Wardner, Mrs. Wardner.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. You had her for the like update. Maybe we didn't have a class together, but I wonder.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I was in that class, but she'd also did a theater play that I was in on. Was it This Town or Our Town or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I played
I think we had to.
3 lines of dialogue. That was it.
Uh-huh. I still think about that to this day.
What, that play or
Yeah, you're part in it.
the cop?
No, this is
I
clearly
was
news to me.
like, I don't even remember it. Like, it was such a good cop number 2. I've never seen anybody play cop number 2 quite as well as you, Nick. Let me tell you.
It's true. I haven't. I've seen no other iterations of that play. No other cop number 2s come close because there are none in my memory.
The way you deliver that line, I'm sorry, Mrs. Jenkins, but I have to go now. Brilliant. Brilliant. You spoke here. It just, I don't even look at things the same.
Bring it back. We do the reunion tour. So that actually does remind me, though, that I think I was only in 1 year of Lit Mag, and you'd probably convince me to join. But I had a piece in it in the junior year Lit Mag. So I wonder if.
As a submission?
Yeah, as a submission. Because
So
I was thinking, I was like, I know it wasn't all 3 years, but then I was like, you know what? I think I was only in it my senior year.
Yeah. Okay. All of that time was kind of a little. It was a while ago, so it's hard to remember, you know.
I know. I was just thinking. I was like, yeah, check out our age, you know.
Yeah, I just entered my 30s just this last month, so I'm like,
yeah,
whew, feeling some of that dust collecting on my shoulders, and yeah.
Yeah, I've got about actually a week. I've got a week left.
Oh, really? Very soon. Well, happy pre-birthday.
Thanks. I'm trying to figure out how to throw a quarantine birthday party. Maybe I'll just call my friends and pull out a candle or something.
Yeah, no, Skype people and make sure you chat with them or something, because that don't be alone and with a single cupcake and
with the dust collecting on my shoulders.
Hey, what I will say, 30 is no different from 29. It's exactly the same, except for the chronic arthritis and the hip joints popping out of place and the eyesight going to hell and slowly losing your mind and becoming very agitated.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, it's the exact same.
Okay.
You got a week to enjoy life. Hold on to it. But yeah, so a little off. What I want to establish you as a creative person. You've always done creative things. As far back as elementary school, I remember you doing drawings of like wolves and stuff like that. Do you still draw? Do you still do the writing and all that?
Yeah. Yeah, I just started again actually. That was one of my 2020 goals because kind of thinking about, I lost it for a little bit there and um if you are you familiar with the site DeviantArt?
The website, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a lot of cool stuff on there.
Yeah, so I was on there, big in my teens and early 20s and kind of the high point of making art in my life. And so there was at one point, I think it was like 2003 to 2013 arts meme or whatever. And so it was like, here's all the art, or like maybe 5 highlights of arts that I did throughout the year. And then it was kind of a like, how old were you? Like what, reflect on how you either grew or how your style developed. So I remember just kind of looking back at that very recently and thinking like, I don't even know if I've made 5 pieces of art in the last 5 years. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna actually do it. So I've been very slowly getting back into like, how does anatomy work? What is color? Granted, I never knew what color was, but now I'm definitely like, this is so hard. What? How? How does it work? But I think I've developed a pretty good eye for form over the years. So yeah, I mean, like you said, I've been drawing since elementary school or even before then. I remember, sitting down and drawing the fireworks that I saw back when I lived in Minnesota. So that would have been before I was second grade. So um, yeah, it's something that I did for a long time and then kind of got away from and am now coming back to. So it's exciting. I'm definitely trying to do more things that I hadn't done previously. So, like you said, animals were a big staple and a focus. Huge animal fan. But now I'm trying to do humans a little bit more like fan art of book characters, where I'm like, this will be fun to realize in drawing form from just from a description or from like the feeling that I get from a character. So I think it's exciting to be able to do that and kind of like get back into it, but also scary and also like, oh, it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that's always been, at least as far as I saw, was a natural talent of yours. Even growing up as a kid, because I remember seeing your drawings, and I would be like, she's just really good at it. Like, it's just natural. It's like where everybody else was at doing drawings and paintings and whatever, I could do okay, but I knew I wasn't doing anything really well or special. And then I'd see you draw something. I was like, okay, that's somebody I need to follow. This is somebody who either knows what they're doing or is just naturally just this is what you do. And I did you do? Was it in Litmag? It was a white tiger with blue eyes.
Yeah, snow leopard. Good memory.
Yeah, yes, I remember that. And I remember looking and seeing that, and I don't know if I knew it was yours originally. And then I think somebody told me, and I was like, well, duh. I was like, no, of course that's Krista's, because I was like, it's very well detailed, and it looks about as lifelike as you could probably get in that medium. And coloring was great and stuff, and I was just like, that's what you've always been doing. And so it was kind of like, good. I'm glad she's still got it, she's still doing things.
Uh-huh.
And I know I don't see a whole lot from of our fellow classmates from Litmag, but a few here and there that I have talked to, it does sound like pretty much everybody's not really practicing anymore, and it's so sad. Like, it breaks my heart because the wonderful thing about the class was we were all talented, or we were all at least developing our talents. And I'm thrilled to hear that you're getting back into the saddle and continuing it, because I've always held you in pretty high regard. Now, I probably never told you that, but that's how I've always felt. So I'm thrilled to hear that you're doing it again. But you work in a few mediums, right? I mean, it's not. Do you do any photography too? I don't remember if we.
Yeah, that actually, I don't know if it was initially my major. I went through a bunch of majors when I first went to college. But yeah, it was definitely my focus for a while. And yeah, I had enjoyed doing it, again, teens and early 20s. But yeah, that's another thing too, where it's just like you're lugging around a camera, and I think it was just that I had kind of lost the drive to really get better. And so it just wasn't worth it for me to keep, camera equipment around that. It is honestly, it's going to be like, so I don't know about so far behind, but just not as good as, the newest things that are going to be lighter and able to do more, just have more processing power. So I was like, you know what, I might as well give it, give it to someone that'll be able to use it right now and benefit it from, rather than it just sitting in the closet kind of thing. But yeah, I do a lot of phone photography. I love taking little videos and being like, yeah, like here's my latest cooking creation, and trying to do it in a dramatic way, but just a lot less serious. And I think that's kind of where I'm at in my life, is trying to just be less serious and more carefree about it, because I think for a long time I was more of a kind of rigid, like world is black and white kind of person, and now I'm like, yeah, let's kind of tone it down and just have a little bit more of a freeing experience with that art medium. So
Yeah. What brought about that change?
I don't know if I could call it a single thing, but honestly,
Just
maybe just
yeah,
just like growing up,
Sure.
ticking closer to 30.
God help you. God help you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, in my observation, knowing you, the maybe not a huge consecutive amount of time, but over a long span of years of seeing each other on and off, I've always seen you as a very detail-minded person. You've always struck me as somebody who looks at the world and looks at it very shrewdly. Like you don't try and mess with metaphors and flowery phrases or anything like that. You kind of cut right to the meat of things, and you look at the detail, and you look at the bones of it, and kind of see how it ticks, and then kind of go at it from there. I don't know if you would agree, or if maybe my observation is a little skewed, but you've always had this look where you seem like you're asking the world, like, so what are you what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What is, you know?
I am a very judgmental person, so I think you're spot on there.
I didn't necessarily mean that, but
I know. That it was ripe for a joke, and I figured you'd appreciate it. So I'm glad that you laughed.
I always enjoy a good joke. If that were true, we would
Yeah.
never have been friends.
Sorry, what?
If you were very judgmental, we never would have been friends. There's no way.
Uh-huh. Maybe I just I had to be friends with cop number 2. So
this is not what I thought we were going to talk about at all. Wow.
keeping it fresh. No, I think I would agree with you on that observation, and I thank you for saying that, because that's kind of something that I pride myself on, is being able to be that detail oriented person who can you know, get to the meat of the matter if it's necessary. So one of my, I guess, prides, I suppose I would say, is being able to like perceive a solution if someone is like, hey, you know, I was doing something and it was frustrating me, or like even without the frustration aspect, just like, you know, being able to see like this thing would have helped them, like either made it easier, whatever situation is, or like could make it easier or more efficient in the future. And so that's something that I like to be able to home in on and just help out with. So I'm glad that you also have perceived that, and thank you for the praise on that. So
Well, no, and that's something I'm not very good with. I'm very much the opposite side of things, so I think that's why it stands out very well to me, and probably why I'm drawn towards it, because that's something I lack. You know, I'm
sure.
a little bit more looking at the big picture and flowery words and all that.
I love flowery words, but yeah, I do. My big picture skills are a little lacking.
Well, and like you said, you know, I mean, you're hopping back in the saddle. You're doing what you do best, as far as I've known you and seen. So, I mean, that's obviously a skill that you can develop and get into. And if there's anybody that can do it, it's definitely you. You are very adaptive, and you're one of those genuinely creative people that doesn't get stuck in a certain genre or medium. So for myself, I mean, obviously poetry is my main outlet. As for other creative things, it's more like a wide range of interests and hobbies rather than different mediums of creativity, I guess. So when I meet people like that, I usually take note of it. There was a buddy of mine who could play guitar, which for me, I'm easily impressed. But I was like, oh man, that's cool, you know. And he could sing too. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. But he could also play drums, and he could also play cello, and he could pretty much learn any instrument he got his hands on. And I'm just like, how? What? No. Why?
Yep.
Stop that, you know? And he'd just pick up an instrument and he'd be like, give me a week, I'll be back and we'll come up with something. I'll be like, I've been playing nothing but drums for years now, and I'm still just starting to get good at it. What do you mean? You know?
Yep. I have a few friends like that. They're just good at everything they touch. And it's like, all right, that's, you know, you can share some of that talent now. That's just
They're so
anytime.
annoying.
Yeah.
It's just... So, standing outside the artist world, the creative side of things, when you hear editing, I think that's one of those things that's very much underappreciated and doesn't get a whole lot of praise. However, as you and I know, that is where a lot of the magic comes, you know, the editing part, the process of that. You being a very creative person and can do pretty much whatever you want. How did I trick you into being the editor for this book? Like,
Yeah. So again, we had developed a rapport, you know, since elementary school, I would say. And I mean, anytime someone comes to me and is like, I think you're, you know, capable and able to do things, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, oh, thanks. So yeah, obviously it was a great compliment to me that you approached me. But again, you know, even just that attention to detail, and basically, if I'm very like it brings me joy to be able to like go into writing and be like, okay, like here's a misspelling, I can do this, like I can fix your grammar here or something. Like it's just something like a little task-based thing that I'm like, yes, okay, this will keep me occupied, and you know, helping people too, like that is honestly a lot of what drives me, like things that will keep me occupied and my attention. And so I wouldn't necessarily say you tricked me into it, um, but I know where that's coming from, and I can appreciate the self-deprecation.
Yeah. Well, um, you know, I've said this. I think I've already said it on here, but I mean, we put it in the book, the acknowledgments and thank yous and stuff like that. But you really were. You were with me once I actually started getting this book together and figuring things out and really trying to make the book a reality. Um, you've always been there every step of that process and helping me out, obviously, in editing process and not letting me fool myself into um, keeping anything that should have been cut or changing things because I was being stubborn and I think I know what's best all the time. you know but you were always very supportive, and you'd ask me, hey, how's everything going? Is there something you can send my way that I can look over? What do we need to work on next? And you always, whenever we chatted, always had a ton of enthusiasm for the project, which helped spur me on and gave me enthusiasm to keep going, because there were definitely some somber days in there, some definitely more frustrating than others, and that meant a lot to me, because it meant a lot, especially because this is your project, obviously, as well as mine, but I mean, you were really helping me out. This wasn't like hey, I'll do the art side of things, you do the poetry side of things, and like a half and half book. It was just you helping me get what I wanted across. And I mean, that's all you did was help me. You just kept helping me and, cheerleaded the whole process on. Does that aspect of you, does that come naturally? Is that kind of who you are in general towards things, or was that a little bit different this way? Were you realizing it was going to tank if you didn't constantly kind of like, hey, you're doing fine, keep going?
Sure, yeah. So I mean, from the get-go, I'd kind of perceived that it was, basically the two of us collaborating, really from early on. And then obviously later you started acquiring the art and the photography and the other aspects of the book. So I think I kind of, not even just because I was like, oh, it's my job, or like I, knew this was very close to your heart, and just being able to facilitate its completion. I think it is very important for me to support my friends in that. And so, again, just very honored that you chose me to help you. But yeah, actually, I've been thinking about this a little more recently, where a few times have come up where we're reminiscing with friends about, say the hard-hitting questions come up on, I think it was New Year's Eve, and people were like, yeah, like if you could go around and tell someone, like, what's your best aspect of yourself or something like that. And I think I wound up choosing my generosity, and a few friends corroborated that, and they're like, yeah, like I've always thought of you as generous. And I'm like, wow, it isn't something that I necessarily, like, it's not strange to me, just because it's so ingrained, where it like doesn't occur to me that other people are not this way, like to just go and help people, which I mean kind of sounds like big-headed, but it's yeah, like it hasn't occurred to me until very recently that it may be not unnatural, but like unusual, to just want to help people like that. So yeah, I guess that is something that I've more recently learned. But yeah, I think, it's, my mother is very, very generous. And growing up, seeing seeing both of my parents like just go out of the way to help others in situations that, you know, maybe other people wouldn't have, is just you know, learning from that. And then yeah, I think just internalizing it into my own nature. So
Sorry.
camera down.
So you're having this beautiful conversation talking about really good in-depth things, and I noticed the camera was a little off and tried to fix it subtly, and it wasn't as subtle as I would have liked.
I mean, at least you did it first, I guess. We'll fix it in post, right?
Yeah, that's not how that works, Krista. That's
Oh shoot.
I'm
I would drop
equipped or
oh, okay.
that either with free camera editing stuff.
Okay. I was gonna say I would drop mine in solidarity, but I really don't think I would be able to put it back in a way that's that's gonna work out. So.
So sorry. that was really smooth. That was good. That was good.
Mm-hmm.
So where were we? You were talking about how awesome you are, and
you prompted it.
you gotta have moments to brag about, right? I mean, honestly, in your lifetime, maybe a handful of times where you can say something kind of nice about yourself. At least for me, don't opportunities very much.
Sure.
Yeah, especially with people jumping up and saying, that's bullshit.
It's not very cop 2 of you, Nick.
Oh, not gonna let that go, are you?
It's the motif of the call.
I love it. That's gonna be book number 2. That's gonna be the title of it. Cop number 2.
Cop number 2. I love it. Working title, if nothing else.
There you go. Cop number 2. I like it. So what sort of things inspire you? What gets your creative juices flowing? What gets you going, oh my God, I wanna draw this, or I wanna talk about this, write about this, speak on it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I follow a lot of other artists on Twitter, which isn't, you know, probably the best medium for artists, so I hear, but it just, the format kind of speaks to me a little bit better than Instagram, but I'm trying to get into Instagram more because a lot of my friends are there, and so I'm like, you know, I want to be able to connect with them, and it you know, they're both great. They are also both holes that you can, you know, lose hours of time in looking at pretty things, but yeah, and a lot of times too, just things in the world, like sunlight on like leaves, for instance, is very inspiring to me. Just yeah, a lot of morning, like I got my house plants, and a lot of the morning light through their leaves is, yeah. But yeah, like I said, the idea of doing fan art for characters in fiction is very appealing to me. And so, because I can, you know, obviously put a spin on even the most basic description that the author gives. And so I've been reading a lot more than I used to. Like, I used to read all the time, but then, you know, fell off of that for a while and just recently started reading again. And so, yeah, I'd say a lot of scenes in stories are really what drives my imagination. So that's kind of the first thing that I wanted to go for, is fan art of, say, indie authors who maybe they don't have a ton of readers yet, but it's like, hey, like, let me get this out there for you, and you can have some promotional things. So
yeah. So is there like an actual, like just something you read, like you've got a favorite novel or something, you sit down and read it, and all of a sudden you get an image in your head and you'll be like, that would be cool, I want to write it down? Is that kind of how it works? Or
So writing down an image from a book I
like
like, or
drawing down an image or a scene or
oh,
something?
yeah, yeah. Honestly, usually it's and I've had trouble articulating this exactly, but so like you, I would say, you create things out of nothing, and I'm more on the editor side of things, where I'm going to create things from things that are already there. Hence the fan art, or like drawing a scene from a particular story versus creating something new, say, which is fine too, but it's just something that I've always admired in others, to be able to be like, yeah, I had this great idea, and it's like I just pulled it out of thin air, kind of thing. Or obviously not thin air, like contextual
Sure.
matters, but
Okay. And that's kind of the nice thing is with this book, with Kaleidoscope Nights, is there is a lot of that element in it. There's a lot of complementary artwork. Um, and that was something I think I talked to you pretty early on, was I wanted there to be other photography and paintings and stuff in it that could enhance or maybe add something to the poetry, but I also didn't want it to be solely, okay, this picture goes with this poem and this goes with this.
mhm,
I wanted them all to be able to stand on their own, while kind of holding each other up. And I think we succeeded in that quite well.
yeah.
Um, so, um, so in putting this book together, what would you say was the most difficult um, problem you came up against, or what was one of the most stressful things in doing it? Because, like we'd said, you were the main editor. You went through literally everything I did and all the artwork we put together, and you also laid out the book too.
Mhm.
So you're kind of the master architect of it all.
That's, you know, I don't know if I have a lot of memory of, like, up until basically the final push, as I would call it. I don't know if it was like October,
Yeah,
November, sometime
yeah,
later in the year. And I texted you, and it had been, I think, a while since we had done anything. And I was like, yeah, I wonder how, Nick's doing. And you would kind of, hit a standstill with, you needed to put it into the, like the Amazon template, I think. Does that
yeah,
sound?
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Setting it up in
And so,
Amazon.
yeah,
One,
yeah,
there were snags in there too, where I was waiting to get some artwork back from other people, or
that's right. That's right.
I, I think there was a moment or two where we had everything lined up, and then I finally decided that this picture doesn't actually work, and we got to change something. There was a few moments like that, which will be better this next time around.
Mhm. Yeah, well, and I mean, obviously, iteration is good for the process. You don't want to get locked in too early and then, not be open to change. But I think, yeah, even, despite coming from, yeah, I really like this piece. I'd love to include it in the book, and then, being able to like let go of it, stay, if you're like, this just isn't, I don't think it's right for this particular book. I think that's a strength, rather than just trying to be like, oh, well, I'll make it work, and then, say not being happy with it later, because then you're always going to look at it and be like, oh, that's the thing that, I decided should be in there, and then
Yeah.
grumbling about it later. But yeah, I think, honestly, I don't necessarily remember a ton of, grading areas throughout, up until actually the final push, where it was honestly just, I think, a mental battle at that point, where you're like, I've come so far, and it's just really hard to just to be where I'm at and feel like I have so much left. But then, I was, again, like, I think a good cheerleader on this side, where I was able to come in and be like, oh my gosh, like, look at, like, we're so close, and kind of able to take some of that off of your hands and
Yeah.
kind of renew the energy and the vigor. But
Like
yeah, so
that
what's that?
final push, it seemed like the closer we got to it, the more frustrated I was, and the more kind you were about everything. You're like, oh no, we're one step closer. I was like, we've been saying that for 5 weeks now. It's bullshit. We should be done.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no, we're gonna be fine. It's great. You're doing wonderful. And then I'd come down and I'd be like, you're right. We're doing good. Great.
Yeah, we did it. Yeah, so I think just kind of surmounting that final hurdle, probably, because honestly, I don't know. I don't have a ton of other memories of. There weren't a lot of other, like, very definite moments of iteration, I think, aside from that. I do have, like, I have a really, and this maybe is a later question. I think I remember reading it, but it's relevant now. So I was going to say, I remember when we did layout in your basement and, like, printed everything out, and we're, like, shuffling around, like, where, does this picture go here? Like, what's going to be the order? Are we going to keep, oddly enough? Like, and then I was like, you have to. I love this poem, but yeah, I have a very fond memory of doing that, just that initial layout, or I don't even know if it was the initial layout, but like, finalizing layout and getting it all together, and, like, it was just such a triumph. And so I really enjoyed that part of it, as a kind of counter to the hard part of the final push.
Yeah, and so what Krista's talking about is, and something I want to emphasize, is she is in a completely different city than I am, and we were working on this book together in separate cities. So thank God for technology, the ability to Skype, to be able to talk, text, and all that stuff back and forth. That's how this book got created. There was maybe 3, maybe 4 times where I actually physically saw you here in town. So there's very few and far between, but we made them count. And one of those great times was doing a physical layout. So we had printed off all the poetry, we'd printed off all the photos and pictures and everything out. And we, in my mother's basement, Krista had come into town, and in my mother's basement, we laid everything out physically, like an old newspaper, or magazine getting put together. We put all the poems down, the pictures. Okay, what do you think could line up with this? Does this work, and whatever? And I even went down to the point where I kind of surmised the theme of the different poems and stuff. So it's like, okay, we've got like 5 tragic poems, we've got 3 romantic ones, we've got 3 narratives, and we wanted to have a nice even balance. We didn't want it to all be, all the romantic poetry to be clustered in one spot, and then it'd get all dark and stuff. And so we were very conscious of that, and that was one of the best times, because this was, like we talked about with Southey and Leanne, one of the milestones was them saying, hey, I know you keep talking about this book. Well, why don't you do it? Like, what's in your way? And that kind of spurred things on, and that was a milestone. This was another one of those milestones of physically being able to see this book starting to come together and planning it like it's actually going to happen. And I told Southey and Leanne this, that one of the biggest problems with doing the book was just the sheer enormity of it. The thought of, I'm going to publish a book. Where do you even begin with that? Like, where do you start? Like, I don't know how to publish a book. I don't know who to go to. I don't know if I can go to anybody. I don't know what the layout's going to be. I don't know what's going to be in the book, which poems, none of it. And it was just the process of, okay, let's take it one step at a time, baby steps. What's the first thing I need to do? And, come down to going through all the poetry and finding the best of the best and, figuring out which ones work, and again, adding photography and all those other elements. And when we had that physical layout, that was one of those moments where it was just, I think I was probably smiling the whole time like an idiot. I was just like, it's there, and then that's there, and when you turn the page, it'll be there, and it was wonderful. And there's a lot of excitement in the room. I mean, even with you were like dancing about the place, like, wait, what if we move this here? And yeah, that's one of the, I think one of the best memories of putting the book together was that day. Yeah, that was a good time. But thinking back to, I really don't remember any bad days. Like you're saying, that final push there got a little tense and frustrating sometimes, just because we were getting so close, and yet I seemed to keep finding out that there was still so much more to do, and it was kind of struggling with the balance of, okay, I just want it done now. I've been working on this for how long? I just want to get it done. And also being like, okay, but if you leave all this stuff in or undone, that's it. That's what it's going to be. And I want to make it the best I could possibly make it. And so, having the patience, and also having you, talking me down from the wall, helped out a lot with that. But yeah, that was a good time. Oh, actually, I have, I don't know if you remember this, but this is the Kaleidoscope Night blueprint. This is the original book. Once I figured out which poetry we were going to pull, I got a book printed off and created and stuff. So in here is the original poems in their original form.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Just old. So we just laid it out. And yeah, so I've kept that. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And this was also a big help during it, because this was a physical piece of evidence, I guess, saying, hey, we've got something here. We've got a book. Need to make it prettier and better and worth money.
Spruce it up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was cool. I don't know if you saw this, but I had taken that book, that binder, to Barnes and Noble one day, and I put the local artists or local authors shelf, and I just put it up there, and I took a picture of myself with it, and I was like, someday that's going to be there for real. And then I got another picture with the book published in that spot with me in it, and it was like, holy shit. We actually did it. Like, it's actually a thing.
Yeah.
So that was probably the final milestone. Is there's my book with a barcode on a shelf inside of Barnes and Noble. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So what was like the most satisfying part of the process? Was there any obstacle you came up across that you just crushed and you were like, this is driving me nuts, but I figured it out and this is a lot better now? Was there anything that you were like, really glad we did this, or I'm glad we figured this out before it got too far and became a real big problem? Or
Right. I think overall, in terms of being just satisfying, was that initial layout day. But I suppose in terms of an obstacle, perhaps when I had first contacted you right before the final stretch, and you were like, yeah, it's just, figuring out this Amazon formatting. And so I was able to go and, I mean, luckily they had a template. Otherwise, honestly, probably still would be figuring it out now. But just, being able to plug it in, plug all the pieces in and show you like, hey, this is kind of a mock-up. Like, this is what it can look like. And then that kind of, I think, renewed your, I guess, drive to finish it. And so that was a really big, being able to see that tangible difference in, this is where we were at, we were so close. And it just needed that renewed enthusiasm. And so being able to just take it and help push it along right at the end there. So I think that, and like, honestly, yeah, I think that would be the most tangible item I could say about that. So
yeah, no, I agree. I remember coming up against that, and I don't think the idea was, at least not initially, to have you really do the layout necessarily, like the plugging it in. It was just more or less help me edit the poetry and maybe help me come the order and what things should go. Because this is something else I should mention. I didn't pay you really anything, and so all this was out of the generosity of your heart, like you said, and
I got this. You gave me a book.
That's the
with some nice words. You paid me in a compliment and friendship.
Sure.
Well, I don't know if I should put friendship on the list of paid items. So.
Well, it's especially starting out, and then there were some artists I was able to pay a little bit, which again was never worth what they had given me. But sometimes I was able to compensate them a little bit, and that was never a thing with you. You never once were like, I am doing a lot of work for you. I could a little bit of, so again, to your credit about the generosity and stuff, and you were very selfless with your time and efforts in helping me accomplish this. I forgot where I was going with that, but what were we talking about?
You hadn't initially, intended. What's that?
Said 30, man. It hits you like a boat.
Yeah, you're only just into it. I was gonna say you were talking about the not having intended for me to necessarily do the initial layout process. Yeah.
Again, because I wasn't able to pay you really, and it was like, okay, I'll get everything put together. I just needed somebody who had talent and a sharp eye to help me make sure I wasn't making a fool of myself and letting stupid things get through. And so once I started getting on Amazon trying to lay it out and stuff, it was a nightmare. That's never been my forte. I'm more of an ideas person, more about the writing aspect of it. And once it started coming down to the nuts and bolts, I was really getting frustrated. And God bless you, you took that over too. And and I know there was a few days where you were even kind of getting a little frustrated, and you're like, I have no idea what's going on here or why it's being like this.
That's right.
But it was nice to know that I was then had to kind of be like, you're doing great. I think you're doing awesome. Don't you worry about it, don't get stressed out, just when you get a chance, come back to it.
Yep. Oh my gosh. You brought back memories. Resurfaced.
Some very well repressed memories.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there was some weird stuff going on with, I think, like was it the page numbers?
Yeah.
Or like and then it was, because we needed to not have all of them show up on every single page. And then like if I deleted it at the beginning or something, then it would delete it from the whole book. And then
seemed to have problems with the positioning of it too. Like it was like technically out of in the bleed line or something, and not. And I don't know. I just
why would you
You fixed it.
Why would you bring this upon my Monday night?
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Just memory lane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
30, my year 30 can take that memory first.
there you go. There you go. Hey. So what was, now this is a point where I get to toot my own horn. What was your favorite poem in the book? Did you have one that stood out to you, or?
Well, yeah, the thing that immediately comes to mind is I wish I had a farmer's tan, because yeah, I think that one has always just spoken so true to me. And, as someone who, I think even after after I'd been exposed to it, like I did wind up going to work on a farm for a few years and kind of living that
That's
yearning.
Right.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was like
And
at that time, wasn't it?
yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
You were like,
And I mean, what's that?
you were like right in the thick of it, I think.
Right. That sounds right. But yeah, and so and I still didn't get a tan because it was always actually cold, or I was sitting in a tractor. So whatever. What's that?
I wish I had a farmer's burn.
Yes.
It wasn't that
Yeah.
good. It's fine. We'll move past it. Go on.
No, it's just like my Skype is kind of cutting out now. My internet has decided that you've had too much fun today. It's now you have to suffer the consequences. Yeah. Yeah, no, but I truly love I Wish I Had a Farmer's Tan. I think that putting it at the front of the book was just such a great move and such a powerful opening. And
yeah,
I don't have enough good things to say about that poem, but close runners up, because I'm not the kind of person to have one favorite thing.
You're my favorite.
Scorpions and Alcohol. Also,
ending
at the end of the book. I just, so putting both of those, and then Oddly Enough, which I think I wound up championing that poem to actually get it into the book, because I love that poem so much. And it just speaks to me on many, many levels. And I'm so glad that you took my lobbying to heart and included it. So
well, do you remember what happened to that poem initially, the first time it was published?
Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to share that or not, so I didn't bring it up. But
I think we may have talked about it before, but yeah, there's the poem, oddly enough, in the book had been published under Lit Mag, but it was some offshoot of it, right? It was like an underground sort of just quick, cheap print off sort of thing.
I thought was that the one where it was like PS? I wonder if I have a copy of it.
Yeah, I think so.
If I do, it's somewhere. But yeah, and so that was kind of the amalgamation of things that didn't quite either, whatever your Lit Mag didn't have enough room, and I think obviously they wanted to include alumni too, because that was after we had graduated. I'm pretty right. Was that the one that you're talking about? Yeah. Because I think that was the first time that they'd done it, and that was after we'd gone. And yes, I do very much remember the consternation, I suppose, of that initial publication.
I was so salty. So they had reached out to me. I don't even remember who was doing it at the time or whatever, but they, like, the idea was really sweet of them, and I appreciate the thinking of me and wanting to put that in there. But they'd reached out and they're like, "Hey, can we put this poem, and publish it?" And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Thank you." I gave them the poem, and oddly enough, and it kind of wraps up the whole poem. It's about essentially an artist's biggest struggle, procrastination and stuff. And the poem ends with something along the lines of, I promised my procrastination days to terminate. From this point forward, I promise to never finish, or I promise to always finish my, and then it trails off. It doesn't finish, which is the whole joke, the whole punchline of it.
Yep.
However, whoever got a hold of the poem saw that and didn't get it. They thought they thought that they thought I literally forgot to finish the word or a line or something. And so instead of reaching out to me and being like, "Hey, what's the rest of this?" or "Hey, what can I put in here?" they finished the line, and it didn't make any sense. I don't even remember what they finished it with, but it was like, "I promise to always finish my linear perspective on life," or something.
Oh, really? It was that bad?
It threw the entire poem out the window. Like, I'll see if I can find it and share it with you.
I was like, I need to look for this now. I'm so curious because I would have thought that because your poem just ends with my and then the li, and so
Yeah.
I would have thought naturally they would have just put in like my lions or something. Like that's
Right.
clearly what you're like trying to say, but
Right.
that is amazing that I didn't realize it was twisted that far.
Oh yeah, yeah. It wasn't like, had they finished it and put my lines in there, it still undercuts the tone of the poem.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
it's fine. I'd be like, okay, I get it. It's a whoopsie. But they didn't even know where it was going, so they added like a whole like couple of words or something, and I was
Oh
like,
my God.
what the crap?
Honestly, that's probably something that younger Krista would have done. Like that's totally the kind of like, oh yeah, I perceive that this, this is what you need. I will let me help and done it. But well, maybe not. But
Yeah.
just because I always like growing up in going to like art classes, I hated it when the teacher would come in, and I think it was only a few people. Like I don't think that. I mean, obviously it varies by art teacher, but teacher would come up and be like, yeah, like I'll help you out. This is you're struggling with this, and then like just start painting on my piece, like fixing it, and I'm like, dude, this is not yours. What are you doing? Like, so I think it's possible that I would have noted like, let's not greatly change the core of something because I hate that and I don't want anyone to do that to me. But it's also one of those where it's like young Krista knew all. And so I think trying to be the like, I'll fix this for you, kind of like a little more gung-ho and wayward in that regard. But
Right.
that's amazing. And
Well,
obviously
I know
that.
you weren't a part of it.
Oh
But,
yeah. No, but I mean like the type of person who would
yeah.
done that.
Yeah, no, that always. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know if I have it anymore. I may have thrown it away. I might have been that mad. I don't.
I'm gonna
But
look for mine. I'm going to if I find it all.
I think that was part of it too. Was like you mentioned, oddly enough, I think part of it was to be like, you know what? Yeah, that is going in there. It's gonna get published, and it's gonna be published correctly, and they're gonna. The world will know.
Yes. now that we've told this story too for publishing.
Oh, that's great. So, was there any lessons learned in the process of making this book, or any obstacles that you came up against that you're like, okay, next time around we're doing it this way, or we're gonna avoid this, or any renewed or refreshed confidence?
Sure. And honestly, it's one of those things that like I should have learned the first time around in LitMag, but maybe being so far removed from that experience in that class, forgetting, obviously. But I think, one of the issues that we had come up was not having, I think, the highest quality file type, I want to say, or file, highest quality file for the images. And so I think they wound up, I think we actually weren't able to use, was it the Christmas lights one?
That might have been it. Oh yeah, the one, the yellow lights wrapped around the was it a stick or pole or tree or something?
Something. But yeah, I love that piece, but I think we just wound up having to cut it because we weren't able to, somehow the original file had been lost or something like that. So
Yeah. Yep, that's
yeah.
right. I talked to Christina, and that was a older photo she'd taken, and I think that was the remaining files.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That's how we that's how we got the cup photo
Yep.
with the yellow lemon in
Oh,
there.
that's right. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think just being aware of, you know, once you're either shooting or choosing pictures, being able to get the highest quality that you need for print,
Right.
obviously. But yeah, I think that would honestly be just one of the biggest things. There are a ton of lessons that, actually maybe I should just um, right after this, like write down and be like, okay, now that we're reminiscing, like make sure you do it this way for book 2 so you don't repeat mistakes. But yeah, and I mean, it's something that I think too comes with, obviously we're kind of wading into, murky water here with, like, we've done it before, but not on our own and
Right.
not in this necessarily format. And so really getting all these lines together of different creative, personalities and putting them together to mesh, I think was an undertaking. But I think the biggest thing about the process was honestly just like technical things like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it's I always joke about this, but it seems like I made every single mistake along the way to making this book. But that being said, I've learned a lot from it.
yeah.
Um, it was a very slow and arduous process sometimes, but I feel like I'm much more confident, and I have a whole new set of skills for upcoming projects, and I think things will go a lot smoother, and will be even better in every aspect. Um, and that just gets me excited for it. Yeah. There were a couple of things. Um, Sorry, did I cut you off about the poetry? I know we talked about the 3. We ended with oddly enough. Was that?
Oh, well, I was just gonna limit it to those 3. I love
No,
Georgia Peaches as well. Like I love Between the Stars and Sky. Um, I
Dr.
love, yeah,
Duffy said she really liked Georgia Peaches. I think she said that was her favorite.
yep. hmm Yeah, I mean, there's so there's so many good ones. Every time I read one, I'm like, oh yeah, I think this is my favorite one. But yeah, I think definitely I Wish I Had a Farmer's Tan and Scorpions and Alcohol. I truly love those two. So
Good, good. Yeah, no, I do too. And I remember when we were coming up with the layout of the book, I don't know if I told you this or not, but I always kind of thought about it as an album.
mm,
What do you start a CD with? Well, you want your best
yeah.
foot forward. You want something that's maybe shorter or a bit more concise. Think of like a pop song. Um,
hmm
that was Farmer's Tan. And then for the ending, I was struggling between doing Cotton Candy, which I felt was another single of the book, and
hmm
Scorpions and Alcohol, which I know there's some bands that like to end on a real nice, happy, poppy note too, and others that end in more of a ballad or some sorrowful, experimental, and we went that route with
hmm
Scorpions and Alcohol.
hmm
I know that was kind of always my mentality. Was I didn't think about it as a book. I thought about it as a CD.
Yeah. Now it worked out.
Yeah, I think it's a great album, and everybody should buy it. But I did want to talk about a couple of the layouts here, which I think they were small elements of it, but it gave the book enough freshness and uplifted it enough. One of the things was the layout for the Facebook Masquerade, which I think is my favorite layout in the book. Danny Little had done these illustrations, which she did for this one. I believe she even created the stamper. So she she had hand cut out this thumbs up stamper that looks like the like symbol on Facebook, and she'd given me what we had decided was everything she drew was going to be in a vertical pattern, in a chain sort of thing. However, that poem is pretty long. It's 3 or 4 pages. And the problem is you've got 2 or 3 pages that are completely just text. And then at the end, you've got that pile of like symbols. And I don't even think I mentioned it to you. I think this was completely you, if I remember right. You took the initiative and you had cloned one of the thumbs up and you peppered them throughout the poem, just very gently. So as once you got to the end of the poem, it seemed like the likes got more and more, and then they just kind of piled up at the end. And that held that poem together a lot better. And it just so together.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know if I can take all the credit for it. I did think it was your idea, but I mean, perhaps we can both just remember.
We'll say it was mine.
What's that?
If it makes me sound smarter, then we'll say it was my idea. That's fine.
Yeah. No, I thought that you were the one who had initially come up with the, like, it's too, or maybe we were just, iterating through it, and you were like, oh, it's too much at the bottom, it's so long, and then, so maybe it was just, a collaborative thing where we were just talking through it.
Most of it, I think, was.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad that worked out. I think it was a very good compromise, I suppose, of the length and the illustration. So
also, there's a photo, the very last photo in the book with Stephen Miklich. There was a problem because the photo was cropped pretty narrow. And I remember just looking at it, and the photo with Abby, it's a little bit narrow, but it's not bad. You really probably don't even notice. But with Steve, there was quite a bit, and there was a lot of white coming in on the page. And for the longest time, I think we were just kind of go with it, like, hey, it's just, that's where the photo lands, and the rest of the white just kind of bleeds in on it. But after enough time looking at it, I was like, I can't justify it. It does look like a mistake. It looks like we didn't line things up, or we didn't, stretch them to fit. And I was really frustrated, and I was like, I don't know what we're gonna do here. And you're like, well, what if I'll just fill it in? I'll just clone, do things. And to me, you gotta understand. I'm like, wait. So you know voodoo, and you're gonna conjure magic, and somehow make his shoulder come into being further than you have it available. And I think you probably just rolled your eyes and you're like, yeah, I'll do this. And sure shit, you gave it back, and I'm like, oh my God. Steve in that photo has a artificially created shoulder. And it is absolutely seamless. It's one of the things I like to point out to people, because it's, I'm like, hey, do you notice anything weird with this photo? Does it look weird? Nobody catches anything, and they try, and they don't notice anything. And then, like, this part of him is not there. And to me, that's one of my favorite things to look at, is because that made that photo what it was. And it wasn't distracting. It wasn't no George Lucas CGI add-on that, draws your eye away from what's happening. It's very appropriate. And for you, I give you complete top marks. Like I said, I think you were just kind of like, oh yeah, I can just do that. We'll just fix that now. I was like, oh, okay. Didn't realize we had that. magic at our disposal.
I forgot that happened.
Oh, really? No,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Wow. Yeah. I can't even tell. I wonder why we didn't do that with Abby, actually, because I remember you were a little, um, with that small strip, which again, I don't have an issue with. I don't think it looks necessarily like a mistake, but I wonder why we wouldn't have done that with Abby's too.
Well, I think with where the book naturally is indented to fold, you wouldn't naturally see that part.
Gotcha. Yep.
But
Sure.
in retrospect, I may have would have done that differently and had you clone that too. But
Mm-hmm.
is that the proper term? Is that what you did?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the clone stamp is. Yeah. I think so.
Okay. Um, I think we could have done that, but I don't. It doesn't bother me. And
Yep.
I think looking at it too, I may have thought that was a little too complicated at the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, looking at Steve's shoulder now, clearly you could have done it easily, but yeah. But yeah, that was just one of those things. And you also did it with the Skeleton King, because that also was cropped over a bit, and you filled that in completely black.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I do remember that because that one it was more of an issue, I think.
yeah,
Because that one
that
I think was the most noticeable because we couldn't really crop that image any further.
right, right. And that
Huh.
one that's dark because the whole picture is mostly black, and then it
Yeah.
just looks like somebody had put in a paper clippings, a scrapbook of sorts, and
Mm-hmm.
you fix that too. Again, seamless. The king seems to conjure out of. I love it.
Yeah.
So to me, that's some of the most satisfying parts of the book is seeing those elements, and those were pretty good obstacles, and we overcame them. I mean, you overcame them, but I was there, and so therefore we
Yes.
overcame them together.
Yeah. I mean, we were using your content, so.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and so there were a lot of little things towards the end that started kind of piling up that we were. It was really, I think, we talked about the more difficult process of it, just because it was a lot of little things, and that was the point where we really were kind of grinding things down and smoothing them over and polishing the whole book. I remember we last minute, and it mostly had to do with me going, this is a problem. It's always been a problem. And now I'm finally at a point where I need to admit that it's a problem and we need to fix it because I can't live with it anymore. And then poor Krista going, yeah, okay, we can do that too.
Uh,
God bless you.
journeys, man.
Yeah. Um, and again, like I said, lessons learned, and book two will be a lot smoother and
Mm-hmm.
faster way. But I remember one of the things was the cover, was the
Mm.
Nick part, which I don't think I've ever talked about it, but the big Nick logo on the front, the Nick part is actually in my handwriting. That's actually um, a Nick that I'd penned down, but I think that's even individual letters, wasn't it? Or some of them were, because I couldn't write Nick. My handwriting's not very good, so I actually had to have you piecemeal like the N and the I and the CK from like different Nicks that I'd written
Oh
down.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Huh.
It was a pain in the ass for you. And
Man, you keep
um,
bringing up these things, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I was a little more involved in this book than I remember. Like, I mean, I remember like being there for you, but like,
oh,
I guess I did things on it.
oh, no, you definitely earned your paycheck, which you never got. And
Uh,
maybe we'll have to see about that this next book. That would be really cool. Because That's the dream, is to be able to start paying artists and stuff to have their stuff in there. This first book around, it was more the idea of like, hey, I can't pay you, but I can promote your stuff and your work, and you get a free thing in the book, so free promotion.
I can pay you an exposure. The artist.
Exposure.
But I mean, at least you're not trying to profit off it. Where that's where a lot of artists, if you have companies and they're like, I'll say your name, and it's like, that's not how rent, paying for rent works. I can't give them my exposure coupons. I saw a comic. Of course, I quote this comic and I can't remember the OP. So, but I'm sure you could, if you Google it, if anyone cares to find out, to be like, yeah, take my exposure coupons.
Exposure coupon. But yeah, I'd finally come to the point where I was like, the nick in there is just, it's a little uneven. I think it's like too high in the G or something like that, and so we had to move it around. I think we replaced some letters and moved that around, which you all did. There was some issues with lighting when we submitted the proofs. Some of the photos were too dark. If Abby's was like way too dark, like half her face was pretty much shadow, and so you had to toy around with that quite a bit, and we got that figured out, and now it looks great. Color saturation.
I know that. Yep, on the drum. That's what I was gonna say. The drum, I remember working with that one.
Yep. And it was all little things like that, and there was a part of me that's kind of going like, okay, these are small nitpicky things, and if we leave them in, nobody's gonna know. Nobody's probably even gonna care. But I'm like, at the end of the day, this is my book. This is the best I can do and put out there, and I know it's there. And I need this book to make me happy, and I need to look at it every day and be proud of it, and not go, shit, I really wish we'd done this different. I wish we put this in, and you were very generous and patient enough to be like, okay, good, change that, we'll take that out, we'll fix that, we'll lighten it, we'll do whatever. You never once, I don't think a single time, were like, are you serious, or can we just let this go? I mean, is it really that big of a deal? So.
Well, I needed to milk the clock.
Yeah. Right. That's cop number 2 money right there that you were raking in. Yeah.
And I sorry, please forgive my one paycheck joke, but I hope I truly do not expect you to pay me. Like, I really appreciate that. You're at it, giving a value to that. But you don't have to pay me for it.
But that's my dream. My dream is to get to a point where I can financially, pay artists. Obviously, I want to give them plenty of exposure and promote them, because they did do good, great, and hard work. But if I can pay them, that is the ideal place to be, because I'm producing an art piece. I've got this book, and I know what it's like to work a ton and to work very hard and be very passionate about something, and for everyone to want it for free, and just, it's like, we've talked about this a little bit, this idea of, for one, if you know somebody who is a local artist, indie artist, whatever, somebody who's not part of the big machine that can just kind of crank things out and has a huge system backing them financially, I mean, you should want to help them get better in some form, whether it's helping create their art or financially support them, whatever, because they're working hard and they're doing fun and creative things and things that aren't always so common, But there's also an aspect where I talked with a band who was handing out these EPs for $1, and I remember hearing somebody goes like, "Why is this $1? Why don't you just give these out for free? What are you doing with the $1?" And he's like, "We did that before, and what would happen is we'd leave the show and we'd see our CDs thrown across the highway, just left and right." And
Yeah.
it's like, the reason we charge for it, even though it's just $1, is now there's some value to it to you. There's monetary compensation there. And now, I mean, you can obviously throw the CD away. You can never listen to it, whatever, but you're a little less hesitant to, because you've invested in it.
Yep.
And it's become an exchange rather than a gift, a freebie. And, that's kind of how I've felt about this whole thing. So while some people could maybe say, "Oh, he's a cheap bastard, he won't just give me a free copy of his book," part of it is like, well, one, I mean, do you not think that an artist deserves, some monetary compensation? But the other part of it is, if I give this book to you, it has no meaning. There's no exchange. It's just, here's a thing, and maybe you'll look at it, maybe you'll use it as a coaster, maybe you'll never hold it in your hand again. But if you invest the $15, well, now it's got a little bit more weight to it, and maybe it's a little bit more to you before you even read it.
For sure.
That's been my thought behind it. So that's why I want to pay. If there's somebody who can submit artwork and stuff like that, or somebody that helps me with the book, that's why I want to pay people, is to get what that's like. And people deserve their paycheck. But
yeah, no, and I absolutely agree with you, and especially coming from, so often people in creative fields, be it like web design or photography or writing, people will ask for things for free, like, "Hey, can you do this for me?" And I think something that I've seen for comparison is that you're never gonna like say to your plumber, like, "Hey, can you just do this for $20 rather than
Right.
150 or whatever." I don't know how much plumbers cost, but it's one of those things where people see it and they're like, "Oh, this is so easy," and it's like such a subjective thing, and then they're just like, "Oh, can you just do it for me?" Or like,
Right.
it's such a strange thing to me. But yeah, I totally agree with wanting to pay artists. Definitely always pay artists. Especially if they're saying this is what my rate is. Like, a lot of times artists will even undercharge, and people will be like,
Oh yeah.
"Oh, well, can you just just do it for me?" Or so I definitely agree with you. I'm glad that you're not a hypocrite in that fashion, as it were.
I try not to be. We're less hypocritical than usual. Well, there's an exact example of this that happened. There's I work with another guy at my job, and he's a fellow author poet, and
Okay.
The guy that we both work for, he got a free copy from him. He just gave him a free copy of his book to read and whatever. And I remember him saying, "It was like, hey, so this guy gave me a copy of his book. When are you gonna give me yours?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I mean, you're welcome to have one for $15, And he was like, "Well, he gave me one for free," and I was like, "Yeah, mine's $15, And I remember walking away just thinking, I was like, "Man, am I really like selfish? Am I like super greedy? Am I, is that bad of me?" And then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, that book is worth to me way more than $15. I'm not crying about missing $15. That's not the point. That's not the purpose. I can't do a whole lot with $15. But again, I realize it's that transition of ownership. And the funny thing was, later that same day, I found out that that fellow author, writer of mine, he came up to me. He's like, I gave him that book like 2 weeks ago, and he still hasn't read it.
Yeah.
hadn't even cracked it open. I asked him. He goes, I asked him. I was like, so what's your favorite poem in here? And he's like, oh, I haven't opened it. I haven't read it yet. And he's like, I gave it to you for free 2 weeks ago. And I sat there and I was like, okay. I feel validated. I'm like, this is not about $15. This is about,
your worth to someone.
Right. And so that being said, he did end up reading that guy's poetry book eventually, and he did end up buying a copy from me. So, and he read mine too. I remember right. He read mine too, and I think it was actually shortly after he bought it. So, that's one of those. But I don't have a problem with giving. If there's some troubled teen or something like that, I would gladly donate a book to them. I'm not going to ask $15 for them. It's like, hey man, I know what it's like growing up. I know pain and betrayal and loss and stuff like that. Here's a free book. Maybe this will do you some good. Maybe, if nothing else, maybe you won't feel as alone, and, we did some stuff like that around Christmas, and, so there's definitely an aspect of it, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's something too that I really admire in you is, being able to say like, hey, I've, like, to be trite, like poured blood, sweat, and tears into this book, but yet it's something that truly seeing a need and saying and going, this, I think, if it can benefit you at all, like it is worth it to me to, take the, monetary loss, I suppose. But like being able to, even just through words on a page, be the shoulder for someone to lean on. So I think that's a really powerful thing to do. And I really look up to that in you.
Well, thank you. And it's, I would very much rather have somebody read my book than I would give me $15 for it.
Yeah.
I would infinitely. There's no better situation than to have somebody actually read the book versus getting a $15 handed to me. The weird part about it is they're way more likely to read it if I charge $15 for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's like a psychology kind of thing that's been studied with people assigning value to things that, yeah. I think it's one of those, like, I read a book once that had outlined it where people, if they own it, then they tend to assign greater value to it than someone buying it. So I think one of the examples used in this book was like tickets to a like Duke game or something, which, you wait in line for weeks, like camping. This is probably hyperbole, but you're spend so much effort waiting for these tickets, and then you're like, okay, well, these are worth like $400. Say you pay like, I don't know, 300 or something, but you own them already, and you're like, here's this great amount that they're worth. But then someone coming up to buy them, they haven't put in any of the work, and they're like, yeah, no, I'd like to go to this Duke game, but they're like, oh, I think that's worth like 150, and you're like, what? But like I have it, and it is mine, and it is worth this. And so yeah, that's a kind of a interesting, something that really interests me as far as psychology, that I've just kind of brushed across the big picture of it, but assigning value to things. But yeah, like paying for something is investing in it, like you said. And so it's definitely a step above, just grabbing it and being like, oh yeah, like I have it. But then people tend to be like, okay, well, other people assigned value to this thing, and so I should too, sort of thing. So like when you charge money for it, it's like, this is worth, I guess, parting with funds that I've raised to have. So yeah.
Well, it's an interesting dynamic, and this is funny because this is more the logistical side of things. This is a side of the business element of being an artist that doesn't come naturally to me, but I've kind of started to enjoy and understand it. And the more I, become familiar with it, I kind of do enjoy it and developing these skills. But like even when we were coming up with the price for the book, that was kind of an interesting little wrestling match, trying to figure out, because Amazon allows you to charge whatever you think it is worth for the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I could have charged for the book as little as like $6 or something like that. And I think it would have made a few pennies off of it per copy, because it just has to be greater than the cost of producing the book.
Yep.
And then, as high as, I think it was $99. So, it was a very interesting balancing act of going like, hey, if I charge $99 for this book, nobody's going to buy it. It's a 54-page book with full color, illustrations and stuff in it. It's not $99. Even though if you were to ask me how much is this book worth, well, to me it's priceless. Like there's way more than $100 worth of effort, tears, sweat, and trial put into it, hands down. But I can't charge that much book. So it's like, okay, where does that price line up? So you go down to $6. It's like, well, if it's $6, anybody can buy it, pretty much. Like, really cheap. Why wouldn't you buy it? But then you come up against the idea of, okay, if it's only $6, maybe that'll also deter people from buying it. Like, oh, it's 54 pages, it's poetry, there's tons of illustrations and artwork in here from talented artists, but it's only $6. Like, all of a sudden you're like, what's wrong with it? What's the quality like? And so we were kind of bouncing all around the place. And, I think at the high end, we were thinking $20, because it's a really good book. And I think it's really good class. And it's full illustrations, and it's a pretty good, like coffee table book almost, it's a conversation piece, but I felt like that seems a little steep, especially for how thin it is.
Yeah.
And then we kind of were going like 10. And I was like, I feel like it's more than that. And so we came around 15 and felt like that was a good balance between value and quality and quantity of the content. So I don't know if we ever talked about that, but that was a kind of interesting aspect of it.
Right. I was just gonna say, like, I don't remember being involved in that process, so I hope it's not another thing that like I was, and I just don't remember. And I was like, I don't think I was involved in that, because it
do with everything and on anything. So I kind of assume you were there for maybe some things that you weren't, but yeah.
Yeah, because I think that was kind of, you had taken it and flown, and not that I was sick of it by any means, but it's just like you were already at a point where you're like, yes, like this is, you're able to fly on your own at that point. Like, it was largely, we had gotten most of the work. I don't know about just necessarily just the hard part, but most of the, I guess, meaty part of it out of the way. So
yeah, for sure. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know it's getting late, and I could honestly talk to you for another like 4 hours, um,
Mhm.
just sheer because I missed the heck out of you, and it's so good to see you. And it's pretty rare when we get to do this. But I do have one more question for you. I know we talked about the poetry and stuff in your favorites in there.
Mhm.
Do you have a favorite layout or art piece that was in there as well? We didn't really chat about that.
Yeah. So actually, I I absolutely love that picture of Stephen. Like
Yeah,
it is my favorite. I love it so much. It's just got just this aura and like mystery and like despite the cigarette, which I'm not a fan of, but cigarettes make for good like I don't know images or just like the idea of what kind
may
of
not.
person this is. What's
It
that?
gets the element across.
Yeah. But yeah, I really really admire Stan's work, and I think honestly that like these three wet plates I think were my first exposure to his stuff, and
Oh, really?
yeah, I think so. Like I don't remember being familiar with him before till you brought him up, but yeah, and then the piece of Abby as well. I really like those layouts, but um, yeah, and I think I like the TV Guide to Being Happy. I thought turned out well with the cracks, but I do want to. I'm a simple person, and those black and white photos
Yeah,
with the pieces, I think just they get me.
yeah. No, there's definitely some character captured in that, and like you're saying with Steve's photo, I think that was perfectly paired with scorpions and alcohol. I think that's exactly how that book should have ended.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
well,
What's your favorite
my favorite
layout?
layout. I really like the Facebook Masquerade. I really like how you pieced that together, and how it worked with the poem with the illustrations perfectly.
Yep.
It added a bit of visual storytelling to it, and I think it just complemented it so well. Um, the Yeah, all three of Shane Balkowich's photos. They're some days one's more favorite than the other.
Yeah.
Um, Abby's is really cool because there's some look about her that I feel like whenever I look at, I'm discovering a different character. Like some days she's the perpetrator, some days she's the victim, some days she's manipulative, like, okay, who is she? What part of this poem is she, or what part does she play in the other poems? And it's
Hmm.
there's something about that look and that style of photography that captured something in there that's quite captivating. But we had Christina on just a couple days ago, which we'll put her video up. I think that's actually tomorrow. Um, but we talked about her cup photo, and that's probably my favorite one she's got up there. And that's the one with the two pictures kind of on top of each other, the one kind of
Hmm.
phasing through, just because the technique of it is really cool and it adds another layer of depth to the photo rather than just being a hand in a cup, with a lemon in it. There's some other patterns and depth to it. But
Hmm.
yeah, I love this book. I'm super proud. It means a little bit more to me, I think, every day. It's something that I desperately needed to do, and it was something I needed to prove to myself that I could do. And I think if this is the only or main thing I produce before I die, I'm pretty happy with that. I obviously want to do a shit ton more. Bigger and
I
better,
mean,
and
you
always
you did hit 30, so I mean, I guess.
2 feet in the grave, got two hands barely sticking out. um, but But yeah, it's whatever, as good as this book is, and whatever. Oh my God, are you okay? It looked like you did a somersault.
Yeah, but yep, I like hit my headphones and knocked my phone down.
Okay, we're even now. We're even.
Yep. Yep.
I just wanted to say real quick, if the book looks really awesome, if it seems to be well balanced, if it's sharp and contrasting and high quality, that is in as much to do with my writing as it has to do with you composing the book and polishing it up with me. And this very much was a team effort with a bunch of other people, and you were my right-hand person on it. And so thank you for that.
Thank you for inviting me on the journey.
Yeah. So we'll end it here. If it's okay, I did want to show you a couple things right after this, so we'll just stop the recording.
Yeah.
And then we can end it. But so this is Krista Foerster, the chief editor and layout designer of Kaleidoscope Nights. Is there any last thing you want to tell the people? Any ancient curses you want to wish upon them? Now's the time.
Bring back Cop 2.
What did you say?
Bring back Cop 2.
Okay, I'm going to end you right now. I'm going to find the right time. There we go.